All right, guys. So this here, this is the same, I believe, video that I posted already from last year, but this one maybe a little bit more set up. So this is kind of our ideas for today. We're going to tackle the product rule and the quotient rule and calculus. So this is the last rule we're going to learn this week. So we've got the product rule, we've got the chain rule, we got the quotient rule, and then we have our power rule. So there's 4 rules that we have to deal with. Now, the product rule and the quotient rule are not adding anything new. So if you remember the chain rule, let me go backwards. The power rule is just multiplying the power times the coefficient and subtracting 1. The chain rule is doing the same idea as the power rule, except it's to larger quantities that are inside of parentheses that can become really ugly algebraically. The product and quotient rule don't add anything new in terms of tricks or ideas of how to find them. They're going to use the chain rule and the product rule inside of the problem. So if we take it, our product rule is this. You'll see it as u times v, or it'll be f of x times g of x. So they look like problems like this. This would be like u, and that would be like v. So I did it in 2 different ways here, so you can you may see it, books do it differently. U times v prime plus v times u prime. That's the product rule. Or it's f times g prime plus g times f prime. Those are all, these 2 are the same thing. I just wrote it differently. So if you take the product rule right here, so when we're multiplying together, we just label things like we did yesterday in u substitution sort of. I'm going to say u is x plus 1, v is x cubed plus 3. The easiest way to do it is just go left to right. This would be u, this would be v, or this would be f, and this would be g. Either way works. I don't like using f of x and g of x because this is already f of x and it confuses people. So I like to change it to u and v. However you like to do it, I don't care. So then we just take u, take v, and then we just take the derivatives of each. It makes it nice because then you're just literally knowing I got to multiply from here to here. So u times v prime. U times v prime goes right here. This is u, this is v prime. Plus v times u prime. V times u prime. So we're just kind of doing this, set this up, and we're just kind of multiplying across here. And once we do that, we just distribute in, we get this, we combine our like terms, and then we get our final derivative. Now, I wrote it this way. Once you start a terminology, like they're giving you f of x, so we're working with f prime, I wanted you guys to realize that when you see f prime of x, when you see y prime of x, when you see dy of dx, or change of y with respect to x, those all mean the same thing. They mean the derivative. So when we clean up the product rule, we get the derivative. So if you guys kind of understand what we did here, all we did was add a formula to this, and then we used our skills inside of it. This is the power rule, this is the power rule. This could have been the chain rule. Just depends on what the problem gives you. So then, to make the video a little shorter, we slide over to the quotient rule. Quotient rule is just a division. And again, I wrote it in 2 different ways. But this one you got to watch out for. This is where you can make possible mistakes just because of the way it's set up. V and u kind of switch spots. So it's v times u prime minus u times v prime. And it's v squared on the bottom. And we'll talk about that here in a second. So if we come over here to this one, and here's our function, x squared minus 1 and x squared plus 1. And I label this as u, and I label this part of the function as v, because remember I don't like to use f and g because it gets confusing if this is f of x. Now from there, I still have to take the derivative real quick, so I use the power rule. 2 times 1 is 2, subtract 1 is my 2x. It's a constant, so that disappears. 2 times x is 2x. So u prime and v prime are the same thing. That's okay. Doesn't matter if that happens. So then I have to apply my formula. I have to put v first in my quotient formula. So v right here goes first. v times v prime, right here. Subtract. Now, I double parentheses and bracket these because the most common mistake is this subtraction point right here. It doesn't get distributed into everything, so it gets a little messy. So watch for that negative right there. So then I'm going to do u times v prime, which is right here with the formula, u times v prime, u times v prime. Put brackets around everything so I know to distribute that negative. And then I take v and I just square it on the bottom. Now, don't do anything to this. Just leave it like that. Write that here. Leave v squared alone. Because what'll happen sometimes is you'll get like x squared plus 1 on top and you can cancel it. If you multiply this out, it ends up getting a little uglier, and it's a waste of time, honestly. So remember, we try to save time. So then we just distribute everything. Watch your signs right here. Once we clean up the top with our algebra, we get 2x cubed minus 2x cubed. Those are going to simplify out to nothing. And then we get 2x plus 2x, which gives us our 4x. And so our f prime using the quotient rule is 4x over the quantity x squared plus 1 squared. And that is the slope at any given point of this function. So with our little shortcuts in these things, we can take these ugly looking problems and we can squeeze them down so you can find the slope at any given point, rather than having to graph it and figure out what the heck's going on. So that's our plan for the product and the quotient rule. Good luck today, guys, and we'll see you during fifth.